The Dogman of the Upper Peninsula. There's something different about the wilderness in Michigan's Upper Peninsula. The trees seem taller, the air sharper, and the nights darker than anywhere else I've camped. There's an isolation out there that draws you in, makes you forget the world beyond the pines, but it also plays tricks on the mind, or so I thought, before I encountered something that wasn't a trick at all. It was a mid-October weekend, the time when the leaves were just starting to turn, painting the forest in hues of red, orange, and gold. The nights were crisp, the perfect time for one last family camping trip before winter crept in. My wife and 2 kids piled into the truck early that Friday morning, and we headed deep into the wilderness, far beyond the usual tourist spots and campgrounds. We had found this place on an earlier hike, remote, quiet, surrounded by towering pines that seemed to block out the rest of the world. The first day was uneventful, perfect even. The kids ran through the woods, chasing each other, collecting fallen leaves and acorns. My wife and I set up camp by the edge of a small clearing, the tree line wrapping around us like a protective wall. There was no one else for miles, or so we thought. As the sun set, the woods became even quieter, as if the trees themselves were holding their breath, waiting for something. That night we gathered around the campfire as we always did. The stars above twinkled through the gaps in the branches, and the only sound was the crackling of the fire. My son, always the brave one, asked for ghost stories, so I obliged. I told them the usual: haunted woods, eerie lights, and lost souls wandering the wilderness. My wife rolled her eyes, but the kids were hooked. They loved being scared. But then, as if on cue, I heard a sound that didn't fit with the peaceful night. A low, rumbling growl, far off but distinct. I stopped mid-sentence, listening. My wife noticed and asked what was wrong, but I brushed it off, saying it was probably just a coyote. Still, there was something about that sound that unsettled me. It wasn't the yip or howl of a coyote, not even close. It was deeper, more menacing. After the kids went to bed, I stayed by the fire, enjoying the solitude. The fire was dying down, the embers glowing faintly, casting long shadows that flickered at the edge of the clearing. I was staring into the flames when I heard it again. This time it was closer, too close. A low, guttural growl that seemed to vibrate the ground beneath me. I stood up, flashlight in hand, and shone it towards the tree line. The beam of light sliced through the darkness, but all I could see were the trunks of the trees and the endless blackness beyond. The growl came again, louder now, from behind me. I whipped around, but again nothing. The wind picked up, rustling the branches, but there was no sign of anything out of the ordinary. My heart was racing, my breath coming faster. I told myself it was just an animal, maybe a bear or a wolf, but deep down, I knew that wasn't true. Then came the snap of a branch, loud and deliberate. Something was moving through the trees, circling me. I could hear the heavy footsteps, the sound of something large brushing against the undergrowth. My mind raced, trying to make sense of it. Bears don't move like that, and wolves don't get this close to people. And then I saw it, and at first it was just a shadow, something tall and hunched moving between the trees. I blinked, thinking maybe it was a trick of the firelight, but then it stepped into the open, just beyond the edge of the clearing. My flashlight caught its eyes first, 2 glowing orbs reflecting back at me, like a predator watching its prey. They were too high off the ground for any animal I knew, and as the creature moved closer, its shape became clearer. It stood on 2 legs, taller than any man, with a body that was both humanoid and wolf-like. Its fur was thick and dark, almost blending into the night. But its face was unmistakably that of a wolf. Long snout, sharp fangs bared in a snarl, and those eyes, those cold, predatory eyes, locked onto me. My breath caught in my throat as it took a step closer, its massive claws digging into the dirt. I was paralyzed with fear. Every instinct told me to run, but my legs wouldn't move. I couldn't take my eyes off the creature as it stalked towards me, its growl vibrating through the air. The fire between us flickered weakly, casting an eerie glow on its fur. My mind raced, trying to figure out what I was seeing, but there was no logical explanation. This wasn't an animal. It wasn't human. It was something else, something out of the darkest legends. Then, in a flash of movement, the creature lunged. I stumbled back, falling to the ground, my flashlight rolling out of my hand. I scrambled to my feet, heart pounding, and grabbed the nearest thing I could find, a log from the firewood pile. I swung it in front of me, not really expecting it to do any good, but desperate to defend myself. The creature stopped, sniffing the air. its growl rumbling deep in its chest. It was then that I heard another sound, a distant howl echoing through the trees. The creature's ears perked up, its head snapping to attention. Another howl followed, this one closer, and the creature's posture changed. It stood still for a moment, listening, and then without warning it turned and bolted into the woods, disappearing into the darkness as quickly as it had appeared. I stood there shaking, trying to process what had just happened. The woods around me were silent again, but I couldn't shake the feeling that I wasn't alone. I didn't sleep that night. I sat by the fire, watching the tree line, waiting for the creature to return, but it never did. The next morning, I packed up camp as fast as I could. My wife asked what was wrong, but I couldn't bring myself to tell her. The kids were blissfully unaware of the terror that had unfolded just feet away from where they slept. I just wanted to get out of those woods, to leave the Upper Peninsula behind. But the memory of that night has never left me. I've heard the stories since, tales of the Dogman, a creature that's been spotted in the Michigan wilderness for centuries. I never believed in those legends, not until I saw it with my own eyes. Now, whenever the cold winds blow through the trees at night, I think back to that night in the woods, and I wonder how many others have seen the glowing eyes in the dark. How many have encountered the Dogman and lived to tell the tale, and how many never made it out at all.